Today, we're going to dive into the life lessons and, frankly, the urgent warnings from a truly remarkable naturalist, Professor Ali Demirsoy. We're going to explore his whole approach to learning, his pretty stark view of our planet's future, and what he thinks is the best way to live a meaningful life.
And this quote right here, this is the key to understanding the man. For Professor Demirsoy, any knowledge that's just locked away in a lab is, well, it's useless. Its real power only gets unleashed when it's shared, when it's understood, and when it's used by everybody. This idea really shaped his whole career.
Okay, so let's jump right into this first big idea. It comes from a simple story, but it reveals absolutely everything about his unique approach to teaching and, more importantly, to learning itself.
Just think about that for a second. In a world where we expect professors to have all the answers, his first reaction was just humility. He didn't try to fake it, he didn't brush the question off. No, instead, he saw that student's curiosity as a chance for them both to discover something new, together. And that moment right there is such a powerful lesson. It just goes to show that saying, "I don't know," isn't a sign of weakness at all. It's actually the very first step toward really understanding something. It also shows that knowledge isn't some secret that's guarded by experts. It's out there, it's accessible to anyone who's willing to just go look for it.
So, now that we have a feel for who this guy is, let's get to his most urgent warning for humanity. This is a message he has been trying to get across for decades.
On this point, Professor Demirsoy is crystal clear. Look, the Earth has gone through these catastrophic cycles before. Giant asteroids, massive volcanic eruptions, and yeah, life was decimated, but because the fundamental building blocks were still there, life always found a way back. But this time is different. It's not a meteor, it's us. And this slide really gets to the heart of the problem. You see, past extinctions kind of wiped the slate clean, but they left the slate itself intact. The soil, the water, it was all still there. But the crisis we're in now, it's actively poisoning the very foundation that life needs to regenerate. We're not just clearing the board, we're breaking the board itself. And if you want to see just how fast this is happening, you just have to look at the numbers. At the start of the Industrial Revolution, CO2 in the atmosphere was stable, around 240 parts per million. By the early 2000s, it was up to 380. And today it's 430. The speed of this change is it's absolutely unprecedented.
And this is what's at stake. According to the data, 450 parts per million is the threshold. It's the point of no return. If we cross that line, the warming could become totally irreversible. And at that point, it doesn't matter what we do, the planet's systems might not be able to cool themselves back down.
So, faced with a crisis this massive, how do we even begin to think our way out of it? Well, for Demirsoy, it all starts with fixing a huge misunderstanding about one of the most powerful ideas in all of science.
You can just imagine. This is the one question he's probably heard a million times. It's that classic go-to misconception that for him just completely misses the bigger, more useful point of what evolution is all about.
And his answer is just classic Demirsoy. It's provocative, and it's designed to completely stop you in your tracks. See, by saying we came from fish, he's not just trying to be clever. He's forcing us to zoom out, to think on a much grander timescale, and to see that the story of life is way bigger and more connected than just comparing ourselves to monkeys. So here's the crucial takeaway. For Demirsoy, evolution isn't just some story about the past. It's a mental model. It's a way of thinking that lets you understand how things change over time, predict the consequences of your actions, and ultimately make way better decisions about the future. It's our most powerful tool for navigating this crisis we've made. So if you start thinking in that evolutionary way, it leads you to another really profound insight, one that totally challenges our romantic ideas about the natural world. We all do it. We look out at a forest or a beautiful sunset and we see perfection. We see balance, maybe even some kind of grand design. But when a naturalist like Demirsoy looks at the actual data, a very different and, frankly, much more brutal picture starts to emerge.
I mean, the evidence is just overwhelming. Nature is not a perfect, finished product. It is a relentless, wasteful process of trial and error. Think about it. 99% of all species that have ever lived are gone. A trout lays 1 million eggs just so 5 can survive. It's a system of adaptation, not perfection. So, what do you do with all that? Given this stark reality, a planet in crisis, and a natural world that's anything but gentle, What does an 80-year-old naturalist think is the best way for us to live?
His advice is really direct, and you can see how it's connected to his scientific worldview. First, live minimally. In a world with finite resources, waste is just irrational. Second, always be curious. Societies only make progress when people ask questions. And finally, choose your circle wisely. Surrounding yourself with smart people is just the fastest way to learn. It really is a roadmap for a more meaningful life.
And this quote just perfectly captures his whole perspective. When he was asked if he'd want to be young again, his answer was a hard no. And why? Because the knowledge he spent 80 years fighting for is more valuable to him than youth itself. It just completely reframes the life of learning, not as a chore, but as the ultimate prize, a treasure worth a lifetime of effort.